I'm Cindy Bertram. Thanks for joining me today on Good Ship Happens. And we have a lot of good things coming up in the cruise industry. Also, something that just came up actually last week. I didn't get a chance to share it because it just came up, but when we think about Memorial Day, it's a way to really celebrate the people that have served in the service, okay? But in the military, it's a great, great way to really celebrate people that maybe have lost their lives in the military. But once again, cruise lines, of course, as I mentioned, do actually provide some discounts for veterans and their families to sail on their ships. So, as I mentioned last week, please keep that in mind. But something that just came up last week was actually a surprise. It was done by Norwegian Cruise Line. And what they did was they surprised military families with a free cruise. Yes. And what they do is they did a partnership with Coca-Cola. They honored more than 40 Gold Star families as part of their 600 miles of remembrance at the Coca-Cola 600 at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And people weren't aware of that too. What they did was it's a designation given to a family of an active service member who died in the line of service. And it took place on Memorial Day weekend. Last week, Coca-Cola 600 actually honored military and their families with activities, including a special brunch for the Gold Star families, and also Norwegian Cruise Line's president, David Herrera, who actually served in the military himself as a U.S. Army National Guard, presented each family with a free 7-day cruise. And that was just so wonderful. I was just in tears when I read about this article because, once again, as David Herrera mentioned, he says, it's a pleasure to really demonstrate this support with our military appreciation program and offer military families an opportunity to reconnect on board our ships and create memories of a lifetime. And they said this program was designed for veterans by NCL veterans, and the Gold Star families have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country, and it is our privilege to really recognize and provide them with some respite aboard our ships. And once again, in November, Norwegian Cruise Line actually announced their military appreciation program to recognize service members, veterans, retired U.S. military, and their spouses with special onboard experiences, amenities, and cruise fare discounts. And this program was actually co-sponsored by David Herrera, alongside former U.S. Navy SEAL Matthew Lewis, Senior Vice President and Chief Security Officer at Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings. But it was just wonderful to hear about this experience. And once again, thank you, Norwegian Cruise Line, for really recognizing military and their families, which is really, really great. So that really was wonderful, too. As far as other things going on in the industry, yes, I mentioned before that cruise lines actually do have godmothers. The godmothers actually do the naming of the ship, which is great. But once again, what people don't realize is it's been a long time tradition. There's always a godmother that's actually chosen to christen the ship, a naming ceremony. And over the years, we think about godmothers. They're women. Of course, we've got famous women that have been godmothers or been named to be godmothers too. Coming up, of course, as mentioned this summer when the Explorer 1 is going to debut. But something that was just announced today, which I think is wonderful, is Carnival Cruise Lines. What they're doing is they've got their new ship coming out, the Carnival Venezia, and it's the first ship there to actually debut their Carnival Fun Italian style. And right now, she began her first voyage to actually then come over from Venice, and then she'll be coming to the U.S., of course. But, of course, it's going to be featuring some standard regulars. For instance, Guy Fieri's Guy's Burger Joint, the Steakhouse Fahrenheit 555, Bonsai Sushi and Teppanyaki, and the Chef's Table, in addition to Piano Bar 88 and Heroes Tribute Lounge. But what they're doing is she's actually going to be sailing on her first 4-day cruise to Bermuda on June 15th, and this will be taking place departing from New York. But what they announced today is they announced who the godfather is going to be? Yes, they've chosen a godfather to christen the ship. And guess who's going to be the godfather of the Carnival Venezia? Comedian Jay Leno. Yes, he was just named today. Big news. I'm so excited because once again, with Jay Leno, he actually, of course, is a well-known comedian, but also he's a late-night talk show legend himself, too. He's just announced today to be the Carnival Cruise Line's first godfather when he names the Carnival Venezia. And that's going to be taking place on June 14th. In addition to serving as godfather, christening the ship, he actually is going to be doing a comedy show at the event, too. And with the Carnival Venezia, it was actually a ship that was operated by Costa Cruises, which is one of the Carnival Corporation's sister brands. What they did was they decided to transfer the ship over to Carnival Cruise Line, and it's their first Italian-style ship, which is great too. And with the Venezia, as mentioned, she's going to be sailing from New York and be home porting in New York. And what Christine Duffy, who is the president of Carnival Cruise Line, shared is she said, we wanted to ensure a proper welcome for the ship and decided having a godfather would be both fun and appropriate. And she said, we thought of someone who would definitely make a fun godfather with Italian heritage. And we knew Jay Leno would be the perfect fit. And of course, what's good too is Jay Leno mentioned, he said it was an offer I couldn't refuse. And also, I'm excited to have my very own cruise ship, although I don't think I'll need a bigger garage. But once again, that comes back to his fun comedian style too. And actually, what people don't realize perhaps maybe too is Jay Leno is actually the grandson of immigrants from Italy. And he became his entertainment career in stand-up comedy, which led to nearly 2 decades long, and as well as host of the top-ranked Tonight Show until 2014. And once again, he currently promotes and hosts CNBC Prime Series Jay Leno's Garage. It's in his 7th season, and also explores the world of cars and people behind the wheel. And he also hosts the game show reboot, You Bet Your Life. So once again, it's going to be the christening is going to be actually live streamed too. So please keep an eye on that for too. That's going to be coming up on June 14th. Once again, it was so great to see that Jay Leno is going to be actually the godfather of the Carnival Venezia coming up on June 14th. But I thought that really brings smiles to your faces too, because once again, it goes back to good ship happens. Exciting things going on so much today more than ever. And once again, with cruising, they really can calm you down depending on where you're going to be going. There's so many wonderful options out there. If you want to, of course, cruise on the ocean, once again, good example, Carnival Cruise Line Venezia. Also, we've got other ships coming up too. I'll share more about that too. But once again, it goes back to another area to definitely look into too, is exploring maybe taking a river cruise line ship. Because with river cruise line ships, they explore different areas within the rivers over in Europe. Also, we have a couple that actually sail on the Amazon River, which is great. Egypt, other areas too. So once again, it's just good to kind of share fun things like that more than ever, because we need that more than ever. So definitely keep that in mind. Also, another area that's really grown like crazy too is if perhaps you want to stay closer to home and worry about flying, whatever. But once again, you can actually take river cruise lines, ships within the U.S. and the waterways too. American Queen Voyages is one. Also, American Cruise Lines is another one. They do wonderful things too with different options. With American Queen Voyages, of course, they do offer Great Lake cruises. I've talked about that before, where they sail from different areas on the Great Lakes and go up to Canada, which is great. So definitely keep that in mind too. So there's so many options out there. It's hard to just explain it in my show, Good Ship Happens. But once again, I'll be sharing more about that too later on. But once again, it was really fun to think about having a godfather being christening the Carnival Venezia. Because once again, as mentioned before, usually the godmothers, cruise lines actually select a female to be godmother of a ship. We've had famous people being godmothers. One that came up before that I was actually at, it was great, was on the Celebrity Edge christening. And they actually had Malala um, be the godmother of the ship, and she has the foundation. She was nearly killed by the Taliban, but young lady who was really promoting young women to really grow in their careers, whatever, and just it was wonderful to see them select her as their godmother. And we've got wonderful people as godfathers, well, godmothers too. So I'll share more about that later on too. Something else as far as I was talking about new ships. I'll share a couple more about things coming up right now, plus some other things that are really exciting too. But once again, besides the Carlo Venezia going to be debuting on June 14th in New York, being christened by Jay Leno, we also have coming up soon too in June is Norwegian Cruise Line's newest ship, the Norwegian Viva. She's actually a sister ship of their Norwegian Prima, which debuted in 2022 last year. And she's going to be sailing in the Mediterranean first, and then later on this fall will be home porting in San Juan Perico, offering different kinds of cruises. And she's going to be debuting, I think, in June 15th also too, coming up in Lisbon. Another ship coming out is the Carnival Jubilee. She will be debuting in December this year. Another one coming up is, when we talk about luxury cruise lines, Regent Seven Seas is fantastic, and their Regent Seven Seas Grandeur is going to be debuting, being christened November 25th this year. Another one, which I've talked about before, is the Celebrity Ascent. It's one of their Edge class ships, and she's going to be debuting December 3rd this year. Sailing from Fort Lauderdale, she'll be home porting there too. But once again, as I previously mentioned, usually with a cruise ship, they actually have one captain of the cruise ship. In the case of Celebrity Ascent, they're actually having two co-captains. And we shared a previous video about that too. The announcement was really fun because they're two brothers that are selected to be co-captains of the Celebrity Ascent. And they're great people too. It's going to be really fun. I can't wait to sail on Celebrity Ascent and maybe hopefully meet one of the co-captains. Okay. Something else that's coming up too is we've got coming up Princess Cruises has their Spirit class ship. I'll be sharing more about that later as I learn more, but that's going to be debuting this fall. And then something that just came up too is with Seabourn. Seabourn actually just did their Seabourn Pursuit earlier in April this year. But once again, we've got a lot of new ships coming out more than ever, and it's good to share those kinds of things because it provides more options for you to think about too if you're looking about taking a cruise, because there's so many options out there. You have to really kind of figure out what you want to do, where you want to go, what fits best for you too, because that's important too. The length, where you prefer to sail out of, if you prefer to sail out of the United States. Once again, we're seeing a lot of cruise lines that are actually basing their ships sailing from U.S. ports. As I mentioned, New York is one. Also, another one is Galveston. And also another one, of course, Miami has been a mainstay of the cruise industry for years. Also with Fort Lauderdale. Port Everglades is beautiful. Another one that's really, really ramping up like crazy in a good way is actually Port Canaveral, which is about an hour away from Orlando. You actually fly into Orlando and then sail out of Port Canaveral, which is about an hour away. But once again, we've got different options. Also from the West Coast too. So keep that in mind, because with Seattle, we're now into Alaska season, which is great. But originally, to sail on Alaskan cruise, you had to actually sail out of Vancouver, Canada. And then what they did was cruise lines decided to look into options sailing out of Seattle, which is easier. I mean, I've sailed out of Vancouver myself several times and I've flown into Vancouver, which is fine. But once again, if you prefer, you can actually sail out of Seattle because you've got different options as far as Alaskan cruises sailing out of Seattle, which is great too. And once again, the Alaska season is short because of the temperatures, weathers. The Alaskan cruise line season actually goes usually from probably May through maybe the first part of September, because once again, then it gets too cold. But it is just a fantastic experiencing that. You can actually take a pre-ship stay first too, and then sail on the ship, going southbound, do the same thing if we go northbound too. Also, just the round cruises too, which is great too. But once again, it's beautiful. You can see glaciers, beautiful small little cities. Sitka is one, Skagway is another one. But once again, just keep that in mind, because we've got so many options out there too. It's really fun to really kind of share these things more than ever. Okay. And something else that just came up too, as far as another cruise line ship, MSC Cruises. They are family owned. With the MSC Group, they actually have, I think, the second or first largest container shipping company in the world. With MSC Cruises, they started several years ago. And also, they've got their MSC Foundation, which I've mentioned because they're doing some wonderful things as far as rebuilding coral reefs, etc. But also, what they do too is they've got the new cruise line, starting luxury cruise line, Explorer Journeys, coming out this July, which is great. But something that just came up is their newest ship is called the MSC Eurobia, and she is going to be sailing out actually this week, I think tomorrow. But what happened was last week they made some big announcements about it, and she's actually the world's first net zero greenhouse gas emissions cruise line ship. And once again, people don't realize what cruise lines are doing to really be able to get to net zero. That's something that the Cruise Lines International Association had really put in as far as a target for cruise lines to actually hit by 2050 to be net zero. And cruise lines are really working very, very hard on this more than ever. And it's good to share things that they're doing. Because once again, we're seeing cruise lines have been building ships that are LNG operated, which is great. But this is actually the cruise industry's first net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And with the MSC Eurobia, they just, did a wonderful ceremony about this last week, which is great. And she's going to be actually leaving French Port June 3rd tomorrow, and she'll be scheduling to arrive into Copenhagen on June 7th. And in doing so, as mentioning, this is demonstrating that operating the net zero emissions is actually possible today. And it goes back to really, I think, the commitment with MSC Group. Pier Francesco Vago, who's executive chairman of the cruise division, had mentioned this industry first net zero gas emissions voyage of our latest flagship, the MSC Eurobia, heralds another significant step on our decarbonization journey, and it demonstrates more than ever anything the extent of our commitment. And once again, this is just a start, because once again, this is just the beginning. They're committed to really this transition and putting things into place to facilitate it. And with it cannot be done without alternative fuels like bio-LNG or ELNG or green hydration or green methanol being much widely available for skeletal use for the vision of making things net zero cruising. And once again, it was just so exciting to hear about this. And then she's going to be sailing out, of course, on June 7th, which is great. And once again, it really is a way to really reduce the fuel consumption. And the speed and the itinerary of the MSC Eurobia's maiden voyages has been specifically designed to really optimize this configuration and the loads of engines to minimize fuel consumption. So once again, too, it's really, really good because once again, it goes back to being very shore efficient, etc. They're working very hard on this too, because once again, it's just another way to kind of hit this goal as far as being net zero. And like I said, when I've talked before about how ships are operated with the fuels, cruise lines are really pushing hard to actually have their new ships operated by LNG. And with LNG, liquefied natural gas, it already achieves up to 20% reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions when compared with conventional marine fuels. And it does actually eliminate all the sulfur oxide and emissions while also reducing the nitrogen oxides by 85%. But once again, this is just a start. Once again, I cannot commend MSC Cruises for doing this. This is really exciting. They've got another ship coming out this fall too, I think the Wool Riopa. I'll be sharing more about that too. But once again, just seeing how they're being greenhouse operated is just so phenomenal. Because once again, it's the way that the cruise industry is really turning to in a very, very proactive way more than ever. Mark, did you have any questions for me on this or not yet?
Hold on a second, see if I can get it back up. And it did something weird. There we go. Couple of quick questions. I was actually wondering. I was actually just making some calls earlier today because I'm waiting for my new glasses to come in and all in that space. And I was wondering that if you go on a cruise ship and you are losing your glasses or you need some work done in the dental category, or maybe you want a haircut or some of the other amenities that we are used to in the world, are there opticians and other people that are on the ships or the majority of the ships that you can actually get such items and all into that space? Because I do know that sometimes you go on a ship and who knows, maybe the glasses fall into the ocean or whatever. So I was wondering if there are ways that folks can have their eye care and some of their other specialty care taken care of while they are on these lovely ships.
Okay, that's a good question because once again, people don't realize that on cruise ships they do have hospitals and doctors on board. Usually those are primarily for their staff members or crew members. But once again, one time I had something that came up. My skin was just, I think, had reaction to something really crazy, but I did see the doctor on board who provided me with what to do too, which is great. I couldn't go out, be very careful. Something came up, but they helped me with that too, and also just resources in that too. I think something came up. I think I had an allergic reaction to something as far as a spa treatment
Hmm.
myself, but I saw the doctors, the medical doctors on board. As far as the opticians, they might have them. I'm not sure, but once again, you can actually, in my case, I just reached out to the staff on board to mention my skin was kind of peeling. It was really kind of weird. I think it was an allergic reaction to a spa treatment I had. But once again, I think it goes back to you can always check when you're on board too. And once again, too is two, you can always check ahead when you're actually in a port because usually they do stay in ports for several hours. You can always check in advance to see if they've got maybe they could suggest as far as that too. But once again, too, is you've got spas on board, which are fine. Um, what else? Just I think just checking with the staff to see if something like that comes up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I saw was I saw an article where they were talking about the fact that the cruise industry is coming back with a bang, and apparently there are even some cruise ships that are over 100% capacity, and there are definitely things that are going on in that space. I was wondering if you had any thoughts around that because I did see that I think one of the major networks was doing an article about that and was mentioning that there were some trips that were some of the passengers were having to maybe rebook or do other dates because they were definitely at full capacities on a lot of these new cruise ships and old cruise ships because now that we are getting out of this pandemic, more and more people are looking for something exciting to do, and definitely they might want to go visit historical places that they've never been to. They might want to go with a family outing since a lot of times the families have been separate from each other and all in that space. So maybe some cousins that are in different states want to gather. And I do know that there were groups that were going the way, whether they were interested in a certain musical style or a certain art style or something, and they would go on these different trips to see parts of the world that they had not seen. So there still does seem like there is a rapid rise in the cruise industry that is coming back with a bang.
It really is. In fact, I didn't have a chance to read that article. I ran across an article today about that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as cruise ships being overbooked, well, I mean, we see that happen a lot when it comes to airlines, of course. They're
Yeah.
overbooked, and the first thing they want to do is they want to take volunteers first. Not kick you off the airplane, but the point is they usually take volunteers first with some kind of compensation. With cruise lines being overbooked, this is really the first time I've heard about this in a long time. As far as their policies, I'm not sure. Would it go back to how late did you actually make a reservation and pay? How they actually would maybe try and do some compensation. Because once again, would it be immediate that the cruise ship is overbooked? I mean, when you get to the ship, would you say, okay, we're overbooked, you can't get on board? I don't think they do that, but they would probably notify people in advance. And that's something I do want to check into because that just came up this week too. I saw that. I really think there is a big demand because people were so pent up, from isolation for close to 2 years. And once again, it's a good way to really experience things together. And I think one thing we learned during this pandemic with COVID-19 is the fact that it's something that actually Sister Jean, who was the chaplain for our basketball team at Loyola, and I mentioned she wrote her memoir. She's a really,
Oh,
really fantastic person. She's been chaplain of our basketball team at Loyola for several years, but a great person, amazing person. But we keep in touch via emails, sometimes phone calls, but she sends me emails from her iPad. Yes. But one thing she told me, I sent her a beautiful holiday card in December of 2020. On January 4th of 2021, she's sending it. Thank you for the beautiful card. I'm so glad we got through 2020. So glad we're moving forward into 2021. And she flat said, Cindy, we weren't built in isolation.
right.
I can't wait to get back to campus. The students can't back either. But the point is, it's just something that you learn. I think in this case, with it dragging on so long, it wasn't like 9/11. People were scared to travel. They're scared to fly. They'd rather take other ways to get to different places. But once again, with this, is a whole different thing that we went through, unfortunately. But once again, Sister Jean, her memoir just came out, and it's called Wake Up with Purpose, What I've Learned in My First 100 Years.
Wow. She's up there with Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger just celebrated 100 years as well. So they are both in that 100-year century
Right.
club and everything. I was at an event yesterday that we're talking about trying to raise the minimum wage, and they talked about the tip culture. And as they were doing that, this was an event at the place that I work at here in Durham, North Carolina. But I was wondering, what is the general rule for tips on a cruise? Because I do know that sometimes people want to tip the employees, whether that be the person that is doing your beds or some of the restaurant workers or a number of others. But as I've only been on one cruise, even though I hope to go on others, what is the general tip rule on a cruise?
Okay, originally when I first started cruising, what we did was we just tipped those staff members individually at the end of the
Mhm.
cruise. Okay, and we always gave them cash tips. I mean, they leave different envelopes, but the point is they go above and beyond. They're wonderful people.
Mhm.
And then cruise lines started going into you could actually tip using the credit card you had online too, if you wanted to. Another thing came up more recently is over the past couple of years, cruise lines have gone into more all inclusive as far as tipping. They include the tips within your package price. Once again, I always think it's important to maybe give these people extra tips themselves at the end of the cruise because they really appreciate that. But once again, it goes back to um, cruise lines a little bit different now. A lot of them have built in the tipping into the cruise fare that you pay. But once again, I really think it's good to maybe give people extra cash tips at the end of the cruise. I always try and do that myself too because they go above and beyond, and they get some salary. The point is that's how they really can make some extra money too, which they need because they work so hard. I mean, I think about working on a cruise ship, which I really don't want to work, do on a cruise ship, but I mean, it's a great experience if you want to travel the world. But once again, too, is they work very, very hard. And usually when you're in port, they still can't necessarily get off the ship too themselves. Sometimes they will. Once again, it goes back to they might want to do that as far as internet. Kind of depends on what the cruise line provides. But once again, good question because sometimes cruise lines have gone into something more inclusive where they include the tipping into the price of cruise you pay. But once again, I don't know how it's actually distributed. In my case, I just like to provide extra tips too, cash tips on the end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely, I'm sure the workers appreciate that. Another thing that I had seen was that Holland American, I know you talked about the different cruise lines, but apparently they're going to have a fascinating cruise because I know a lot of people are fans of the North Pole because of Christmas when it comes around and Santa Claus and all of that. But people also are fans of the South Pole as well. And definitely people like to think about going to Antarctica and a number of the other very cold places. But apparently, they're going to have a 133 day pole to pole cruise starting at like a little bit above 26,000. So definitely, they're saying that you can go from the North Pole to the South Pole on this particular cruise ship. So I was wondering if you had ever thought about going on a cruise like that where you get to go from one end of the Earth to the other end of the Earth and all in a cruise ship because apparently that's something that Holland has got going on is a pole to pole cruise ship. So that does sound like that would be very interesting and very fun.
It does look too long for me. Okay, I can't make up 133 days. Plus, it's a lot of money. But the point is, we're seeing, I think, a growth. One big area as far as cruising has actually been Antarctica.
Hmm.
It's amazing. And the thing is, with Antarctica, I think I mentioned, I just was at an event in Chicago where the point is, Antarctica is a beautiful place to go, and we see some cruise lines going there, more luxury high-end cruise lines going there. Another one that came up in 2021, they started in 2021 in the summer, Atlas Ocean Voyages. We're just going through the end of the pandemic, but Atlas Ocean Voyages actually started sailing, and they do Antarctic cruises too. And we see so many options out there. It looks like a beautiful place to be. Plus, once again, you're not on big ships. They're very, very small ships, low capacity, usually luxury, which is great. And once again, you really kind of be able to embrace the culture, which is so important because once again, I really think that we've learned so much going through the pandemic, through COVID-19, is people would like to really explore wonderful places that maybe they've not been to before. And it's really great to be able to do that and think about that too, because that's really a place I've thought about going to. It's a little cold and chilly, but once again, it looks like a wonderful place to visit and be able to see some beautiful things too, in a very, very small, intimate way too, because once again, they're very, very careful about the marine life and just wonderful things about that too, because once again, I think people are thinking outside the box. Originally when cruising first started, you thought about Caribbean. Alaska's been a mainstay for years too. Other areas, once again, river cruising really taking off well, but once again, I think too, we're seeing really, really growth as far as maybe going to cold places like Antarctica, which is great. And we have different cruise lines that offer that. Just wonderful things to really think about if you're thinking about taking a cruise, maybe saving up to do that because it would be such a, I think, a beautiful experience. And there are cruise lines that do offer that. And it's very, very luxury, of course, but once again, it's just kind of a lifetime experience too, because once again, they're very, very safe how they do it too. And definitely, I think it fits a hot button too for people that want to maybe get something a little bit different too. What you mentioned too, as far as the Holland America cruise, which is pole to post, sounds really interesting. It's a long time to be away, which I couldn't do right now. But once again, it goes back to you can actually, if you didn't want to do that, you actually have an option to actually sail in a cruise around the south, and actually they can actually do north areas too, which is great. And like I said, with the Antarctica, it's really the least populated continent, and it's located entirely south of the Antarctica Circle, and it's really, really it actually has the geographic South Pole, and it's the fifth largest continent, what people are not aware of. But once again, it's looks like it's just absolutely beautiful. Um, and of course, with Antarctica, you have to remember that the Antarctic ice sheet has a thickness of, they have 1.9 kilometers. Well, again, it looks just fantastic. It's got a very, very small population, of course. And once again, they got research stations down there too. And I just think it's actually the coldest, but driest, windiest of the continents that we've got in the world too. And I really think that would be good to really think about experiencing too, because there's so many options out there too. And with Antarctica, you're seeing leisure cruise lines going down there. Their ships are very, very small, maybe accommodate maybe 100 people. That's it. They're high end quality. And once again, you experience different places too if you want to, which is, good to think about that in mind too, just because we have different options out there too, just to keep that in mind too. I know Lindblad Expeditions does that. I think Hurtigruten does that too. Once again, luxury cruise lines do that too. So that would be something to definitely keep in mind in the future because there's so many options out there too. Another area that's really, really beautiful, I've not been there, but the Galapagos Islands is gorgeous. And once again, there are some small ships that go there, but they're very, very careful because it's very, very protective of the wildlife and the marine life too. It sounds like a wonderful experience. And with Celebrity Cruises, they actually have some special Galapagos Island cruises too to keep in mind too, because it goes back to really what you want to see and experience but with the nature and the wildlife and keeping them safe, I think is wonderful. And just kind of shares more what you want to see and experience too. Because once again, I mentioned with Lindblad Expeditions, um, they've got their Antarctica expeditions, which is great. And they've got different itineraries they can go on to, and they've got smaller ships, which is great to keep in mind. You can actually see the wildlife and the sea life there, just wonderful things too. And definitely they partner with National Geographic too. So once again, it goes back to other ways to really experience the world in different ways too. So definitely keep that in mind. I'll be sharing more in a future episode. Something else that, as far as new ships, one that is going to be launching actually not until January of this 2024 is actually Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas. I mentioned it before. It's actually going to be the largest cruise ship ever built operating. And they just announced some wonderful things about Icon of the Seas. And with it's owned by Royal Caribbean, of course, but with Icon of the Seas, they just made some announcements as far as their dining experiences too. They just announced some things. They're actually going to be having more than 20 new and signature spots, from fancy restaurants to, of course, Royal Caribbean's very famous international first food hall too, which is great. So once again, it goes back to different options you could actually experience when you're on a ship. And they've got, as far as new dining venues, they just mentioned these this week, is their new dining venues on board the Icon of the Seas will be their upscale Empire Supper Club. It's a really lavish, swanky 8-course experience. The Aquadome Market, the food hall, and they've got their Azumi in the park, which is an all-day window with fresh sushi and more. And of course, they've got returning venues, of course, that range from Italian cuisine to Japanese, Mexican. They've got Giovanni's Italian Kitchen and Wine Bar. They've also got El Loco Fresh. And once again, it goes back to what they were doing is with Icon of the Seas. What they've done is Royal Caribbean mentions that they've designed Icon of the Seas to offer every guest, no matter what their tastes, their ages, their mood, their occasion, a variety of ways to really easily make those moments their way every day. And like I said, if vacationers want to stick to their favorites, they can do that. Like kids and chicken tenders, they can mix up every night with new flavors. Because once again, they're offering 20 different experiences on board. Icon's got 8 different neighborhoods that make it possible. As far as the Empire Supper Club, it's located near the Central Park neighborhood. It provides a really extravagant night out with a taste of old New York. And it's got an 8-course menu. It features premium American cuisine from caviar. They've got a drink pair with every dish, which is great. They've got a 3-piece band that plays unexpected renditions of modern favorites. Also, they've got with special occasions and maybe milestones, the VIP treatment is now at this new 12-seat private celebration table. It's paired with Aquadome's sweeping ocean views, and the diners can get a choice of exclusive Italian, American, Asian seafood menus, along with the option to really add a personal touch. And once again, their signature venues, of course, include Central Park's American Steakhouse, which is great, Shop's Grill. They've also got the dining room, which is 3 levels, and it matches up with 3 different courses. They've got their hooked seafood in the Aquadome, and they got Giovanni's Italian Kitchen and Bar, new on the Royal Promenade, and they've got the now 2-level Coastal Kitchen in the sweet neighborhood with an exclusive chef table too. And as far as quick bites with the Aquadome Market, it actually consists of 5 different stalls. They've got one for crepes, mac and cheese pot with different toppings, of course, and then of course Asian treats, but different things like that too. And once again, just different things, which is really fun to hear about that too. It really makes you get hungry, right?
That sounded
So I
delicious.
would
I was
eat
getting hungry just listening to that and everything. But as I was listening and the computer was having its own moments, I was wondering what are the business centers like on computers, and do they have business centers, and can you get a computer or access to offices if you want to do work while you're on a cruise? Because I do know that cruises are about vacations, but sometimes people are on there and they are doing work as well. So I was wondering how accessible is it for the business community to do work there as well, because definitely sometimes people have to do their jobs while they're on the computer on the cruise as well.
good question because once again, we can't avoid doing work sometimes. It's good to be able to make sure you check on a special Wi-Fi program, perhaps. Cruise lines have those too. That's a growth. It's a given. It's not just a choice anymore. It's a given. Okay, and I know that some cruise lines, when I sailed on Crystal Cruises back in 2016, they actually had a special area for computers.
Oh well.
Okay, now Crystal, of course, fortunately went under, but once again, um, they are restarting with 2 ships, I think this summer, under Crystal Cruises, and also once again, too, it goes back to Crystal Cruises. Also, before they went under due to the pandemic, they actually had built some River Cruise Line ships too, and those were taken over by Riverside Luxury Cruises. But once again, it goes back to, I know before when I was taking cruises before you came up, I was just simply sometimes I was doing a project for a friend of mine. What I do is I actually get off the ship, and you can find places to get Wi-Fi to connect
Mhm.
with your Wi-Fi. I did that. I mean, bookshops did that. Sometimes also restaurants. I was doing a project for a friend of mine, and so I was in St. Thomas. I went to a place to get some lunch, have free Wi-Fi. I was able to get some emails off to my friend.
Yeah,
Once
that
again,
could definitely.
goes back to too, but just go back to definitely check on getting some kind of Wi-Fi program before you sail on the ship, so you don't get so messed up. Because they have different Wi-Fi programs available, so check on that too. That's important because we can't really live without that. But a lot of times you see people with their small laptops too. But once again, it goes back to um, checking on the Wi-Fi programs that cruise lines offer in advance. You can purchase that too, or just check with your own Wi-Fi program too. Because once again, you don't want to get nailed with big bills at the end.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that and everything. You had mentioned earlier, and we do still have that commercial and everything. So if you like, as we get ready to wind down, and I know you got some other talking points that you want to give as well, but I thought we showed those brothers because those brothers are hilarious and all in that. So we've got that video. So let's take a look at the brothers video as we get ready to wind down the show.
Right. Great.
I am thrilled to be here today to announce the captain of Celebrity Ascent, the Amazing Edge series. They bring their own spirit and energy to the ship and our crew. And so I would like to eliminate all the suspense and announce that the captain of Celebrity Ascent is Captain Kafajis. Oh, did I forget to say there are 2 of them? For the first time ever, Celebrity Cruises has 2 captains. So gentlemen, I happen to know you both really, really well. We've worked together for 15 or 16 years. And a lot of our guests have sailed with you, and some of them know a little bit about you. But they nor I know a lot about you. So let's roll video and learn about your amazing lives.
My name is Dimitrios Kafetsis. I am from Port of Athens, Piraeus, in Greece. I graduated the Captain's Academy of Syros, and I am a captain with Celebrity Cruises for the last 19 years. 33 years altogether at sea with Celebrity Cruises. My personal milestone and best moment was when I became a captain at the age of 36, being by then the youngest and by far the funniest captain on the fleet, only to live enough to have my brother breaking this record at the age of 34. Bless you, Tassos. I will never forget you for this. My relationship with my brother can be described as father-son relationship and not brothers, since we have 11 years difference with Tassos. I know my pretty face fool you, but there are 11 years difference. When I first heard that I was going to be the captain of the Ascent, and together with my brother, 2 brothers to start a ship for the company we love.
My name is Tassos Kafetsis, and I'm a captain on board Celebrity Cruises.
The reason I came to the maritime industry is because of my brother. He's my role model. I was so influenced by him, so I applied for Celebrity Cruises that my brother was working already. And I joined Celebrity Century back in 1998, once it was brand new. And I moved on, and 25 years later, here I am as a captain. Since we became a captain, we didn't have the opportunity to work together, and we're always saying how fun it would be if we could do a contract together, even as captains. Now, to do that together with an opening of the newest vessel of Celebrity Cruises, it's like a dream come true. When he first became a captain, I gave him a Mont Blanc pen and a Warren bead with a cross and an evil eye, and I said to him, have it in your pocket, and when you think that you are helpless, just put your hand in your pocket, rub it, and you're gonna be there. You mean this one? That's you? Yep. Him. I would say that I might be the prototype, but he is the newer, better version. Captain 2.0, if I may say. He changed the way captains interact with their guests and the crew. He opened up a big window for all the captains to follow.
Not only congratulations, but thank you. It's such a pleasure and an honor to work with both of you every day, and I can't wait to be on the stage with you on Celebrity Ascent.
Yes.
I bet, knowing the two of you, you are going to have a lot of fun with the guests.
When we both would be dressed up as captains on the ship, I will go talk to them first, and then I claim that I had to go, leave, and Tassos come back, and carry on what I started, and see if they're going to pick it up. And I guarantee you,
Are they going to get a prize or something if they do pick it up?
They're going to get a dinner with the captain.
Oh, how fun! There you
with
go.
this captain.
With that captain.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard. This is your captain, Captain Cafetzis of the Celebrity Ascent. No. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard. This is your captain, Captain Cafetzis of the Celebrity Ascent. No, this is your captain, Captain Cafetzis of the Celebrity Ascent. No. This is the captain, Captain Cafetzis of the Celebrity Ascent. Τι κάνεις εδώ πέρα, ήρθες στο καράβι να μου κάνεις το καπετάνιο. Τι αυτά που λες τώρα, πάτσε να παίξουμε τώρα.
I love that. It's so fun to see co-captains, and definitely plan to perhaps sail on Celebrity Ascent after she launches, because I would like to meet one of the co-captains, if not both. Once again, this is a great story because once again, we have cruise lines that really embrace the fun aspects too. Going back to the question we were talking about as far as internet, one thing to keep in mind too is definitely check into an internet package that cruise lines are offering on board, because otherwise, once again too, is make sure that you keep your iPhone devices into airplane mode. And then when you get actually off the ship, you can actually check and see if there's Wi-Fi available, depending where you're at too. Once again, cruise lines are really ramped up on internet Wi-Fi. There is a charge for it, usually too. But once again, one thing that came up too recently is there's one company that cruise lines are using now. It's called SpaceX Starlink, and a lot of cruise lines are now using that on their different ships too. So once again, it goes back to, really depend on Wi-Fi for certain things. Once again, it's good to kind of keep your phone into airplane mode too. Be very, very careful about that so you don't get extra charges for your internet provider too. But once again, we're seeing people that really do depend on different things when you're on the ship, connect with different people too. But once again, just check into what the cruise line you're going to be sailing on does actually have as far as the Wi-Fi, because that's important too, so you don't get overcharged last minute unexpected things too. And once again, it goes back to, we've got wonderful things going on in the cruise industry. I'll be sharing more, but once again, with working on being net zero, which is great. Also, that wonderful thing that Norwegian Cruise Line just did last week, as far as surprising Gulf Star military families with a free cruise. And also with new cruise line ships actually sailing out now pretty quickly, and different options as far as where you want to sail. I think those are all good things to keep in mind as far as when you're taking a cruise, or think about taking a cruise, because once again, it goes back to sharing insider tips and also positive things going on in the industry too. We don't think about that, but once again, it's important to share these kinds of stories too, sharing more of what good ship happens on board the cruise ships too, and what they're doing in very, very positive ways. I mentioned last week, Norwegian Cruise Line has been doing this I think this is the 4th year they're doing it, but they're actually recognizing teachers. People can actually nominate a teacher, get it into their system first, then actually select 20 different teachers that will be awarded a special event coming up too. So take a look at that too. I mentioned last week in My Good Ship Happens. Mark, any other things you want to mention today before we close out today or not?
No, I think that's about it. You were doing a great job as always, and all in that kind of way. Actually, I did have another quick question. Is there emergency situations if you come there and you need to have clothes washed and things along those lines? Or are there any laundromats on the cruise ships and all in that space in case maybe you did not bring enough and you want to do that old quick packing and then want to, maybe you had something that caused it to get dirtier than you were expecting, and it got more soiled than you wanted, and you wanted to have the laundry. So is there laundry options on cruise ships?
Good question. There actually are. Originally with cruise lines, they would actually, if you wanted to, you'd have some things, put things and just note it with your cabin steward. To be a laundry service, they would charge it. But also some cruise lines actually have laundromats on board their ships too. You actually do your own laundry if you want to. If you get really bored, do your own laundry. That came up. I've done that once or twice. When somebody got a little dirty, that don't want to wait and pack up dirty clothes. I'm packing up. But some cruise lines actually do offer laundromats on board the ships. It varies with cruise line to cruise line. But once again, too, is they always offer some kind of laundry service too. You get charged for it. When actually they have, you can actually note it, and they usually have a bag you put it into and leave in your stateroom too. And there's a charge for that too. But sometimes with cruise lines, they might offer a free laundry service too. So definitely good thing about too, with different options out there too.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. When I think of cruise ships, I think of them as being like a mini city on the ocean and everything along those lines. So I was just wondering if you had a dream job or a dream thing that you have not seen on a cruise ship that you wish was on a cruise ship. So maybe we can give the cruise ship industry some ideas and everything. So is there something that you have not seen on a cruise ship that you wish was on a cruise ship?
I don't know, so many options. As far as entertainment, they do such a great job. The thing is with the entertainment is included.
Right.
Broadway shows, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And they always debut new ones. It's really fantastic. Right. Smaller experiences. We have high-end culinary chefs. Mm-hmm. One I've gotten to know over the years is actually Rudy Soneman. He's great. Mm-hmm. Fantastic chef. I tell people, I've met him several times. He had me review one of his books about a year ago. It's not a cookbook, more of a business kind of book, but he wanted me to review it to give him some ideas, whatever. But the point is, I always tell people he originally launched with his Culinary Arts Council on Holland America Line. He has restaurants on Holland America Line, plus Princess Cruises, plus the Carnival Celebration. And the thing is, I tell people, his cuisine is so pretty, it's almost too pretty to eat. It's beautiful. But he's got such a great personality, and it was great because once again, it goes back, they do that. Something that I think is really good too. I've seen some cruise lines that have ambassadors. Mm-hmm. That, boy, I'd like being an ambassador on a cruise line. I would like being an ambassador on a cruise line because certain cruise lines it just kind of exudes just energy too, because once again, there's so many good positive things going on, and you see so many people that are happy. Okay. You really don't see unhappy people on a cruise ship. Right. It goes back to my mindset. Yes. Good ship happens.
It is a great mindset that you have and everything. I was just actually seeing an article that they were talking about all the different things that you can have on the cruise ship. And definitely they were saying that there are cooking classes, yoga sessions, and even naturalist briefings that were common on cruise ships, and definitely even some professorial lectures and book clubs and TEDx talks have been taking place on cruise ships as well. So they were talking in this article I read sometimes back, it was before the pandemic, where the Viking Orion actually hired a staff astronomer who lectured in a planetarium-like theater on topics such as space, the history of astronomy, and NASA's astronaut programs and the Hubble Space Telescope. So that was something that took place before the pandemic, but who knows, they might be doing it again. And then you've got fashion designers doing the shows and all kinds of amazing things that are happening, because apparently the Transatlantic Fashion Week was held several years back as well. So I guess you could go there and be on a trip that might have these different themes, including one that dealt with biotech and ancestry. So it does seem like these cruises have some interesting themes that are on their trips as well.
They do. And one thing also, as far as we were talking more about expedition, Lindblad Expeditions. I was at one of their events about a couple weeks ago, and they actually do smaller ships. They have smaller ships, very small capacity, maybe 100, 200 people, the most under 200 people, especially if they're going to Antarctica.
Wow.
Maybe 100 guests. The wonderful thing is they actually have special people on board that do those kinds of experiences. They're experts in those fields, which is great, because once again, if you go different places, they have so many people that actually will accompany you and really show you different things. And that was actually the event I went to in Chicago. And what they did was they had one of their captains speak.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think I mentioned his name is actually Captain Cook.
Captain Cook was there, and I do remember you mentioned that before and everything. I was just thinking about that pole-to-pole trip and everything that they've got, that cruise that Holland is doing, where they're going to go from the North Pole to the South Pole. And I'm wondering, as we're heading off this particular episode, if they're going to have any penguins and polar bears on that particular trip, or if you're just going to have to watch them when you get to those various pole-to-pole stops. Because when I think of the North Pole and the South Pole, I usually think of the tuxedo animal, the penguin, and of course I do think of the polar bears as well. So I was wondering if they're actually going to have penguins or polar bears on the ship, or you're just going to have to wait to see them on the outside of the ship.
No, not allowed on the ships. But once again, they have different small experience you can do that you would actually see polar bears, penguins, the whole thing. What they shared on this presentation a few weeks ago was just phenomenal. I mean, it was just phenomenal to see what you can actually experience. Another reason why, when we talked about places I want to go to down the road, as far as a future bucket list thing, Antarctica is one. I mean, I don't necessarily like cold weather, but to experience the wildlife like that too, in a very, very safe environment for them too. They're very, very careful, keep them safe, and that's more important than ever before. I think really cruise industry is really moving forward on that too, which is important too.
That's very important. So I'm going to go out with that J-Lo commercial and everything along that line. And we're going to get on out of here. But it's been another amazing show. And as you like to say, good ship happens. And there's always some amazing things going on. But I'll let you do the closeout, and then we'll go to J-Lo.
Well, thanks for joining me today again on Good Ship Happens. I'll be sharing more next week, because once again, we have wonderful things going on every week. Good news, positive news. And it's good to share these kinds of things, because once again, we have to remember that in the world today, we want to make sure our environment is safer than ever before. And the cruise industry is really working forward on that so much, including tourism too. We're really focusing on that. It's good to share what's really going on in a very, very positive but tremendous, true way. Until next week, I'm Cindy Bertram. Thanks for joining me today on Good Ship Happens. Thank you.
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Ahoy, Jennifer. Lovely to see you. I'm so excited we're partnering on Virgin Voyages.
Yeah, I'm really excited too, but I was thinking that maybe before we announce it, that we should decide on my official title at Virgin Voyages.
Yes, and I already have a few options for you.
Okay.
What about something catchy like, don't be fooled by the ship that I got. I'm now Jenny from the dock.
Okay.
Dame Jennifer Lopez.
Isn't there like a paperwork and like a sword involved?
Supreme Goddess of Mermaids.
You know what? Let's just tackle the title thing later. I'm just excited to share our gorgeous ships with the whole world.
Okay. Look, I'll brainstorm a little more and catch up soon on it. Mermaid in Manhattan?